to comment on the situation with Israel and perhaps how we get at least some more significant strands of opinion in France on board?
Okay. Okay, so just to answer, I guess I'll start answering Janet's question about the UK-NATO Norway initiative. But basically that was about is basically simulations on verifying warhead dismantlement. So basically the UK makes a big deal out of this, the fact that they basically do role-play games with the Norwegian government to like say we'll be country X, you're country Y, and we'll go and inspect your nuclear facilities to make sure that you've actually, like this is kind of making as if we were like trying to actually dismantle our warheads. They're actually using real warheads. They're just like going through the process as if it were going to take place in the future. But obviously the UK government make it out as if it's like this really big important thing. It's good that they're starting to do it because they're like then getting the practice to actually do it for the future. But obviously compared to actually doing it in the real world, it's another matter. But when it comes to actually enforcing and getting states to comply and making sure they're open and transparent about the nuclear weapons, these kind of practices will be important. But at the moment, it's simulations rather than actually proper deep cuts to the nuclear arsenal. But the fact that they're doing it with Norway is significant because Norway is, as with the UK, is part of NATO, and Norway and other European countries are now moving away from more and more from basing of nuclear weapons in their territory. Norway hasn't got US NATO nukes, but the fact that it is within NATO and it's become a more gradual and increasing support for nuclear weapons convention and is now funding ICANN, the Norway government is helping fund ICANN, is significant. Also significant is the fact that 70% of European population, European people are opposed to NATO nukes being based in Europe. That's obviously clearly significant. Also clearly significant is the fact that German representatives, the German government, have tried to get the NATO's new strategic concept to include disarmament language in it. And this is, as well as Belgium and other countries in Europe have, this is being strenuously resisted by the US and by France. They're kind of blocking this at the moment. So I think in terms, one of the interesting things about ICANN is it is an international movement, and we're trying to increase capacity in these countries, trying to increase links, and that's part of what the Geneva office is about. So we're going to establish an office in Geneva and strengthen links with Africa, with the Middle East, with other European nations. As far as Israel goes, clearly the debate at the moment is all focused on Iran, which doesn't have nuclear weapons and is a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and supports the Nuclear Weapons Convention. Now, clearly Iran is not the nicest regime in the world, but mainly in its history it has had a defensive approach to foreign policy. It hasn't invaded a country or hasn't been at war or hasn't been aggressive for 200 years. And is open to the idea of convening these talks in a Middle East nuclear weapons-free zone, which was one of the really key points made at this year's Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty conference in New York, that in, I think, 2011 or 2012, there would be convened a conference on this in the Middle East. But Israel has kind of, as soon as that came out, Israel said we're not going to be a part of that, because basically Israel said until we have security in the region, we won't feel comfortable about getting rid of our nuclear weapons. So it is important for the US and the UK to keep on pressurizing Israel to either join the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty as a non-nuclear weapons state, or to open up its nuclear facilities for investigation. And at the moment these steps are being resisted, and Israel, basically because the US and UK said they don't want to single out Israel because they feel that any putting pressure on them will make them shrink back from these kind of commitments. So this is where we are at the moment. But yeah, I think clearly the next step forward in the Middle East is for a Middle East nuclear weapons free zone. That's got to be the way forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike, any comments you'd like to make on the last contributions?
Yeah, just to say the French anti-nuclear protesters we were part of the walk with were absolutely inspiring. And although the trade union movement in France might not be at the forefront of anti-nuclear activity, there are people out there, as Janet says, who are doing a good job, and the potential of working with them is an exciting one. Thank you, Adam, for the information about Plymouth Trades Council. We will now draft a letter of support to send to them. The other thing was about NATO and if it's spreading to Israel, because it spread through the former Soviet countries to the borders virtually of Russia, and has been associated in there with saber rattling and causing bother and heightening tension. When I was out at Strasbourg at the protests around the 60th anniversary of NATO, there was serious discussion between particularly German and French MEPs and both countries' equivalents of lawyers for peace about challenging NATO on the basis that the UN Charter apparently admits the formations of alliances for regional defence. But by looking at any possible dictionary definition of the term regional, anything that went from the United States up to the borders of the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union, and now spreading down to Israel, is very, I would have thought it was on very dodgy ground. And they were talking about a legal challenge on that basis. I just don't know if anything came of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, the issue about NATO is a subject for a meeting on its own, quite honestly, but there's no doubt that is a major threat, and it's about to adopt a new strategic concept in the course of next month, I think, which will almost certainly endorse the use of nuclear weapons as the first use of nuclear weapons as one of the main strategic aims of the organisation, plus adopt the idea of missile defence as a key mission of the alliance. And of course that is an alliance that's expanding, that's becoming far more aggressive, that now is involved in a global role as really America's alliance that America uses as a cover for this. So I think we need to, that's something we probably need to come back to. Can I just come back to the issues that Brian and others raised about the Scottish Parliament elections? I think it's important to remember that I take the points that Brian and others have made, but we are a multi-party organisation, and nothing would weaken or divide Scottish CND more effectively and more quickly than if we endorsed a particular political party. And we cannot really do that. Our policy has always been to call for people to vote for candidates who will, in their view, best oppose Trident replacement, and I think that should be the continued basis of our campaign, that we should try to influence the candidates. We are a party composed of a whole range. I mean, even just looking around this room, I can see members of the SNP, the Labour Party, Solidarity, the Green Party, the Communist Party, and probably other parties, SSP. There's other parties I'm sure that have been left out. So we are all coming from different ways, but what unites us is our unity to get rid of Trident and to work in our different ways. And that diversity is our strength as well, because and so I think we have to maintain that, and endorsing a particular candidate or particular party would certainly not be unifying at all. It would be the very opposite. I think the point that somebody raised about the majority now being on our side, somebody kind of mentioned the figure of 67% opposed to Trident. Other figures have put it even higher, up into the 70s in Scotland anyway, who are opposed to Trident. It's how we make that majority count. That's the job that we have to do over the next 12 months in the course of our next year of campaigning. How can we, and indeed in the course of the next few years, how can we deepen and broaden the alliance that we've already built against Trident and move it into action and make its effectiveness felt. That's really the job that I think confronts us, and obviously the Scottish Parliament elections will be an opportunity to do that, but it will go long beyond that and into the campaigns in the future. So without any further ado, I think that there's a lot to be done. I think we've done a lot in the past year, and I think that this morning's session has been very constructive in helping to point the way forward.
Can I ask you to thank our three speakers? It has been, I think, a very useful